Today I have my PR African czar, Sammy, back. And our first conversation, video conversation, was cut short, and sometimes those things happen due to technical difficulties. But we said we'd be continued. So, Sammy, I want to continue the conversation and talk about it's 2017 African PR and what your plans are for 2017 for you and your company and where you see the future of PR in Africa.
Well, first, let me say thanks for having me back. Let's see. To answer your question, I would say plans for 2017 as far as me and the company, we're definitely actually going to be traveling this year. We have plans to hit up some countries in Africa, so we are definitely excited. Um, Sparkle Media is kind of taking on its own, identity, which I'm really kind of happy and excited for. So there's going to be a lot of traveling. There's going to be a lot of, face-to-face interactions. There's going to be interviews, and it's going to be it's an exciting time. So we're definitely excited for 2017 and what it has to bring. We have some surprises for our followers, and yeah, I don't want to give away too much, but it's gonna be a good time.
You definitely came to the wrong place, not to give too much away, because I can be a little nosy. So
I know you're nosy. I
yeah,
know.
so tell us, folks who hear it, what countries do you plan on going to this year?
Well, we have plans to go to Ghana and Nigeria in the first quarter, and I think on my calendar in the third and fourth quarter, we will be south of the Sahara. So we are talking Rwanda, South Africa, and Congo is on the list. So it's going to be definitely a good year as far as, travel and, getting to know the people. We're working on trying to get Kenya on that same swoop, but, we're going to see what happens. So, yeah.
That sounds awesome. And some of those countries, I know some people, not necessarily in PR, but it's always good to know as many people beforehand to link up with. So you'll keep me abreast, so I can say, hey, let me introduce you to this person via Facebook, because there's like so much going on in Africa where I know tech people and companies here in the
Mhm.
States, especially black ones, who are looking for funding, begging for funding. And I know some guys in Africa, it's like funding just drops in their lap if they're doing the
Right.
work. And so, it's really the setup. And I keep saying this, it seems like every day that I'm able to, that Africa is happening now, and we need
Mhm.
to invest and put every type of stake we can now, because it's going to come to a point where, people in America are going to say, wow, Africa's booming. We got to go out there for a
Mhm.
vacation, and we should already be set up to, handle those foreigners, I'll say, and get their
Yeah.
money.
Right. True. True.
Yeah. So, we were talking about before about pricing in Africa, and how do you make pricing work with your clients and still be able to afford to do it, because we know, like, with currency conversion rates, America is
Mhm.
expensive, and Africa PR is still kind of a new thing. How do you get a doable budget working with your clients, um, because of the conversion issue? Have you found it to be an issue, like you said?
Well, yes and no. I just I think I work with, the under 30, 35 population. So money's kind of already an issue. As far as they're not making the big dollars with someone that is maybe in their late 30s, early 40s. Um, and you kind of have to, I knew going into it that that was a risk I was taking. Um, and I just kind of weighed the pros and cons of that because I could have, I could have went corporate. I could have went, almost the easy way and went corporate or a small boutique PR firm, but I decided to kind of do my own thing and service, a certain clientele just because I know that market. If you look at it, Africa's median population age is 35. That's young. That's very, very young. And so, a lot of the people where I'm dealing with or who some of my counterparts are dealing with are not that old. So, that's a risk of business of doing that. And so you have to just kind of have that mindset. And so I'm budget friendly. So we definitely talk about budgeting. Budgeting is very, very important. And as far as payment schedules, like I said, I'm a one and done person. You don't pay once, it's a wrap for me. Like I don't have time to kind of nag you and try to go hunt you down and figure out why I haven't received my payment just because I'm not on the continent. So I can't, go to your house or send somebody to go there and say, hey, where's my money? No. It's like, okay, you take your loss, but at the same time, I'll just terminate, our contract. It's just, I just don't have the time. And this is, everybody knows this going in that that's what's happening. So, as far as conversion rate is concerned, I know in Nigeria the conversion rate is super stupid high and it's very annoying. Um, um, it's like it's so ridiculous. It's like a ridiculous amount just because of inflation and what's going on there. The political climate, it's just like it's just terrible. But yeah, you try to get the money where you can, cut your corners where you can. I don't advise that obviously, but you make it work. You make it work. Definitely, you make it work.
Okay. I know in PR in America, a lot of companies, a lot of clients will try somebody out, 6 months. And a lot of companies, big companies, they may go, every 6 months, they may have a different PR company because they think that they should be getting more. And I'm talking about the folks who have, hundreds offices everywhere. And I want to know, is the African market more loyal when they find somebody good? Do they stick with that person, or do they then, maybe they go to the next level and they, switch it up? Have you found that? What have you found?
I I've found this to be true that a lot of, especially I will speak in the terms of entertainment. Um, I found a lot of clients that they are loyal. They will stay with you for a very long time. And when the breakup happens, it's like a divorce. It's like it's really bad. It's really ugly. Feelings are hurt, words are said, because this person just becomes a part of your family at some point. So, it becomes a lot more difficult to just, break up with the person. But I've found that a lot of people stay with their PR person or, management team for a very, very long time. Like I said, unless something happens where something dramatic, it's like I'm out of here. It's a wrap, that type of thing. But I've experienced that most people I have talked to is like, yeah, that's a client I've had for 5 or 6 years. It's like that's kind of unheard of on the state side.
Okay, okay. That's good to know. I know in music, the international market is the first market I want to target because it's more loyal. And fans in America have ADD. And so it's good to hear that loyalty is there. It's then, I guess, the challenge is to be able to find the clientele that can afford
Mhm.
to,
Yep. Mhm.
to have and understand what you're doing. Um, so no, that's interesting. I I want to know if you've ever dealt with how to get shows for your clients being abroad. I mean, and booking, not every PR firm does booking, but a lot of times with with clients who are just coming up, you almost have to wear multiple hats. That's why at cprfirm.com we call ourselves PR and consulting, because we're wearing multiple hats. Do you deal with booking at all? And if so,
Yes.
how do you go about
Yes.
doing that?
Ah, that's that's my favorite part of the job. I deal with booking as in the sense of because a couple of my artists on my platform are kind of up and coming, so we kind of have to put them out there via shows and things like that. It's let me just say I've had my experiences where the booking goes really well, and you know let me preface this by saying that Africa is very it's very diverse, and I sometimes fault myself because I think sometimes like an American, and I expect things to be done like an American, and I forget where I am, and I get checked really fast. So, with that being said, the first booking I did or tried to do, I had a timeline. I said, okay, I'm going to reach out to the promoter on this day, and then follow up 2 days later, and then if we get a confirmation, and then I will ask all the necessary questions, and then pull up a small contract, all the fun things, and then 24 to 48 hours prior to the show, get the final call list, where my artist needs to go, and then I let the promoter know this is who my artist will be with, XYZ, da da da, da. And had this all planned out, had it written out beautifully. It was going to be a smooth sailing. Well, the 2 days lapsed where the guy didn't reply to me for about 4 days, and then when he did reply, he was very kind of just like very like abrupt and very rude, and then I like I sent him all the stuff he had asked for. He asked for artwork, he asked for a photo, he asked for music, and I sent him that, and I still hadn't heard from him. And it's, literally 72 hours before the show. Management has to send money to the artist to make sure that he has transport to get to the show because, transportation in Africa is kind of a problem. So we got to make sure we time it. And, one of my artists, like, kind of lives in the, not rural, but kind of outside the main city. So we have to plan for him to like get to the main city. And so, we're like, dude, we need to know so we can, get him the funds at least to get to transport, at least so we can be like, okay, show starts at 10. You need to be leaving this city by this time so you can get there in enough time to change and shower, do your thing, rehearse, and then go.
Mhm.
Guy didn't reply. Guy didn't get back to us until literally the day of the show and said, "Oh, is your artist coming?" I was so mad and I was so upset, and I had to remember saying, "You, in this case, you are not, just any. You are a professional, and you have to remember to keep your mouth shut." Like I was so angry. I was like, "This is very rude. This is unprofessional. What type of stuff is this? I have never." Like I was mad. So I had to call management and say, you need to take over this booking because I'm going to lose it. This is not cool. Like, this is not appropriate. Like, how do you have a show with four of the biggest artists, in that area, and you're reaching back out to me in the day of the show talking about, is he coming? No, I'm not talking to you right now. So I had to, that was my first booking. And I remember my friend, who happens to be my business partner, said, Samy, this is not America. And I had to be like, oh yeah, this is true. I think that's what made it. But I had to say, but that's still not okay. Yes, this is Africa, and Africa has, things about it that makes it different. But professionalism, whether you're in Brazil, Ghana, America, Britain, professionalism is professionalism. And if somebody is reaching out to you to have a conversation about a show, due diligence, you need to be on the ball with that. And I get you're busy and you're probably running around doing, the last bit of promo work, the last bit of securing visas and all this other stuff, but that's still no excuse. If you don't want my artist to perform, a simple no, we're not interested will suffice, and we'll move on. So
Well, I love that story. And then I think of, depending on, the country and the time that this is happening, when one is in Africa, someone could be like, hey, I'm just trying to get my air card, my time right on my phone, right? I'm trying to figure that out. But in professional is professional, but this is not just an African problem, and it's really not just a black problem. But I'm going to focus it on that because I find even your black businesses sometimes in America, your restaurants that they're supposed to be open but they're not, or whatever the business is, right? Especially in food. Maybe I take it more personal because I'm a fat guy. Um, um, we need to work on our do we need to work on our professionalism, or are we just on a different time clock? Because when you go to the second and third world, you do not expect your meal to be out in 20 minutes or 30 minutes because that thing is fresh, it's being cooked, it's people like island time, they call it. So are we so conformed to an American Western time, that we expect everyone to now conform, or should we all? I don't want to say be lazy, but expect like, yo, we know these plantains are going to take a minute, and the fried fish is going to take a minute, and you know what? When someone's in Africa and we're calling from 1,000 miles, unless we have money for them, they may take a minute. Depending, I mean, I'm just asking the question: are we more just conform to this westernized thing, then maybe they're right because in Rome you do as the Romans do. And so I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
I and with my situation, I had to learn that fast. Uh, it I I came to the States when I was 7. I'm 20, that's 20 some years of doing things a certain way. I just got into the PR business, I want to say a couple of years ago, and dealing with dealing with clientele really heavily within the last maybe 2 years. And so these are lessons I had to learn very quickly, that not everybody is on a time schedule. We have this thing called CPT time, where party starts at 6 and I'm showing up at 9:30, and I it's frustrating because it's like, look, I'm already on a whole different time zone than you anyway. You're 9 times out of 10, you're about 4 to 6 hours ahead of me. So I'm waking up out of my sleep to contact you. The least you can do is respond. You, at the end of the day, you are a business. At the end of the day, you want customers. Because the minute I open my big mouth and say, look, this business did this, it's a wrap for you. It's a
Mhm.
wrap. So I think that there has to be a balance. I think there has to be a universal time system where if just like if somebody contacts us for consultation, they're expecting an answer within what, 24 to 48 hours, right? And
Mhm.
so why isn't that reciprocated? Where if I'm reaching out to a promoter, I'm reaching out to a magazine, or I'm reaching out to a TV station, why isn't the turnaround 24 to 48 hours? I get it. You're probably busy and things like that. But if you're going to use that excuse, you're in the wrong business. I'm just going to put that out there. You are in the wrong business. You can do something else. But being in PR, being in media, deadlines are everything. Deadlines are around us all the time. We have to meet deadlines. And you're kind of at the mercy of this other person because, you know, essentially you want from them more than they want from you. And you kind of have to, play, you kind of have to play the fence a little bit and say, okay. But I, that's, it's a situation that's like, there needs to be some kind of fine balance where, if I reach out to you or you reach out to me, you're going to get a response within a decent time frame. That way you're not in a standstill, because now I'm like waiting. In the meantime, I could have probably called two or three other promoters and got an answer within minutes, because that has
Mhm.
happened where I have called promoters, or I've, emailed promoters, and within a half hour, I was booked, confirmed, and reserved. No problem. Then, I have the promoters and they'll wait 24 hours before the show. Then, it just, I always say, thank you so much for the prompt response. He's like, and one of the guys I remember down the line, I booked the show, and like I said, within a half hour, literally, he confirmed our presence. He let us know what time we needed to be there, what time sound check was, the hotel that is nearby if we wanted to stay the night, the name that to say when we got to the hotel. Like everything was literally nicely written in the email. Like I was so impressed. I didn't know what to. I almost wanted to cry. I was like, wow. Why can't everybody just why can't everybody just be this precise in one city instead of us going back and forth? Oh, okay. What time is this? It's 7. Okay. And then I had to follow up with another question. He had literally anything I had anticipated, he had in that email. And I said, thank you so much for your prompt response and, for being so meticulous. And he said, he said, you're welcome. He said, you're welcome, Sammy. And if you have not had this experience, then you're dealing with the wrong folks. He said, because being prompt and being concise is my business. And that's what has kept me in business for 20 something years. I say, won't you do it?
Yeah. No, that is awesome. I just know, and I've done a lot of research that when in Africa, even like your work schedule in Africa, here working is 8, 10, 16 hours, whatever. In Africa,
Hmm.
an 8-hour work schedule planned may be really 4 hours of work. And for some people, depending on where you're at, could be less. And it all depends on, I'm talking, type of executive type level stuff. Because, if you're working at a food place, you're going to be working that 8 hours that you're scheduled for. But you know, to work with Africa, how flexible can we be, and really then afford to stay in business? I always think of, because I'm like, I hear people's prices, and I'm like, how can you afford to do that? Because it's a difficult time for me with small business here. Our prices are not the cheapest. And when small business comes in, it's like, whoa, we could either hire somebody who could be with us full time or hire you. And so we're always showing our clients and teaching them why you're hiring us. And, one of the reasons I say you hire this caliber of experts because you see what we've done, but you also can fire us much easier than you can fire an employee that would cost this much. And you're not going to be paying any unemployment or anything. And I
Hmm.
find it. I don't mind people going elsewhere, but I make it real hard for you to fire us because we are good. And people who do decide to go and check out the waters, a lot of times they come back because they're like, and that's if their budget can afford it. Because again, I mean, this is a real salary employee you're paying because we have over 1 billion impressions. We do some weird and unique stuff before whatnot. So I always think Africa. I talk to my African friends, I give them the price, and sometimes I see their face like, okay, I'm gonna have to check that out. I have to look into ask my investors or whatnot, or because that's a real price. And so, how flexible can we be? Because all of Africa is not broke. Oh, and that, and I know America, they think Africa lives off $1 a day, everybody. But when you go to Africa for real, and you're like, and it's not a mission trip because I know I can hear an American say, "Well, I went and I just saw flies around the babies in the village." Nah, we ain't talking about that part of Africa in the village. We're talking about the city. All of
Hmm.
Africa is not broke. So I have real
Right,
prices.
right.
I have friends who can crash their new Mercedes and they'll get a new one tomorrow. So I just, and I'm worth a Mercedes, and I know you're worth a Mercedes, if not a Tesla, Maybach, and everything else that's with it. So I always, have a real price and don't treat anybody different, because the price sometimes has to be the price. So that's interesting. Now, when you go to Africa this year, are you going alone? Are you bringing a small team? We're trying to become part of your luggage. That's why I'm asking that.
I am going by myself, and I have my business partner who's actually already in Ghana. He went before I did, um, because I have to still kind of work here a little bit and just finalize some things. And he has a dual citizenship with Ghana, so him going there is never an issue. But visas and the recent elections, we're just kind of in a standstill.
Hmm.
And it was cheaper for me to go in a certain time frame as far as ticket pricings and stuff like that. So yeah. So I will be meeting my business partner in Ghana, where we would obviously, the artists that we do have in common, the artists we have together, we will be working on just like a little small media tour, because I won't be there for too long, because we got to come back to the States and work. Um, and so we're going to put together a small media tour. And then I've scheduled some interviews for myself. Yes, I'm greedy. I
Nothing wrong with
scheduled
that.
some Yes, I scheduled some interviews myself, and some just kind of meet and greets, to shake hands and rub elbows with some of the people in the music industry in Ghana. Just to kind of position myself as a music PR, and to kind of put my client out there as well, kind of doing a double whammy in that area. And then when I go to Nigeria, I'm actually going for 3 events, I think is what we're scheduled for. I'll be covering one, I'm presenting an award at another, and then I'm like a panelist at another event. So it's going to be really exciting.
No, that sounds exciting, and we are going to make sure to have your social media in the description box, for
Oh yeah,
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 for
for
all the.
sure. I will definitely have all like my social media. Like I'll definitely be periscoping during that time, and a couple of the interviews that I'm actually doing for somebody, as far as like me interviewing somebody, will be on Periscope. So you guys will check that out. It's going to be great.
Okay, and hit Sammy up, especially if you have some business or if some questions. Make sure if you're asking her for services, you have some type of budget in mind. That's the most annoying thing when people say, what's the cost? $1 million. Now pay it. Have a budget in mind. so a professional can work with you, and you're, because you're not getting over by lowballing anybody. You're actually delaying your process. I tell clients, you can pay the cost, or you can pay the cost long term and not get the results that you expected. But I want you to hit her up, not just because you see the thumbnail that we're going to put together for her. I, I
I am happily take it. Thank you.
yeah, I want you to hit her up with some business. So the thirsty times, y'all just stay thirsty, whatnot. Follow her on social media. But those who are really serious, those are the ones. Hit her up in the DM, hit her up in on the email. And the rest of y'all just like the picture. But we're gonna do this again, Sam. Um, I know YouTube and I know podcasts. I want to just give them a piece at a time and really let them, learn, because in every speech that someone gives, 9 out of 10 times they only pull away from two things, and you've given them a plethora of information and knowledge for them to go research and find you and stay connected. So on that note, if there's anything else you want to say, let the audience know. And I thank you for coming on.
Okay, well, let me just say thank you for having me. And then also, coming February 2nd, the second season of hashtag PR Chat Africa is back. It's me and six other ladies. We host a weekly chat about, PR, Africa. We're going to have a, plethora of topics. We're going to have some great things coming. So you guys should check that out February 2nd. Also, you guys can follow me, my personal page at chic_Coco Bell, and then you guys can follow Sparkle Media at Sparkle Media CC. And every Thursday we do a Periscope hashtag Sparkle Sip and Sparkle TV, where we talk anything PR, music, and any other thing. So tonight will be on at 7:30 Eastern Standard. So if you guys want to come and join me live, that'll be fun. And yeah, if you guys see me on the continent, feel free to say hi.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you again, and you have a good one. We will chat off air real soon.
All righty. Thank you.
Thank you.